So one of the big talking points this week has been Blake Grupe again and everything like that. Just kind of where are you in that process, letting him work his way through and kind of kick himself out of the rut?
Yeah, I think we're exactly where we were after the New England game, where he came out and he had a good performance. And, so we had a miss at Chicago 53. We wanted to make it. Conditions weren't ideal. But I think we're in the same spot as where we were last week.
It's not a situation where it's a worsening concern or anything like that. Like you're comfortable letting him continue to kind of.
I am, yes.
Yeah.
I am.
Well, you mentioned in Chicago the conditions, 50 plus. Is that one that maybe typically you kind of forget about more quickly, like given the context of the season, people remember?
Yeah, I think that's a great point, right? Like if we hadn't been talking about the misses before that, or you go out there, Chicago, it's 53, and the wind gusts for the guys that were there right before the field goal happened, you brush it off. But because of the prior misses before that, it's going to be discussed more, and but we're comfortable where he's at, and like I said, he had a good week in practice leading up to New England. And then after that game going into Chicago week, he hit 100%. He practiced yesterday 100%. So we just need to continue and pick up from where we left off at New England game and go make the kicks. And shouldn't be any conditions at home this week in the indoor. And so the other thing I was pleased about, I don't know, like we took a look at is, we had some field goal protection where it wasn't as clean as we wanted to be. And I thought that our guys, the offensive line, really responded and did a great job in that Chicago game as well. And they had some good rushers. Obviously they had blocked the kick already this year. So I think we're making progress in the right direction.
The young guys who are getting a lot of playing time this year and development. Is there anybody who, not a lot of stats show up, like when you guys were reviewing some young players who are making a really big impact on your units that stand out and deserve the attention for what they're doing?
Yeah, listen, I think there's some things that'll go unnoticed, right? I think Danny Stutzman has done a good job, but he's had some stats, had some tackles, right? But I think that when you take a look, in like Quincy Riley, for example, like he plays the corner position on punt return for us. And I think he's done a good job of holding up their gunners and giving us a chance to kind of get some punt catches there. I think when you take a look, it's some unsung things like we've had, whether it be Kelvin Banks or Torricelli, like on the field goal protection, like those guys, it's an adjustment. Those things are, new for them at the level of which teams are going to rush field goals. So, but, there's been a bunch of young guys, and I think some of it a little bit gets lost when you take a look, like I take a look at Isaiah Stallbird and Jalen Ford, for example. Like neither of those guys had a lot of reps last season. I think both were under 100 total reps, so like they're getting great exposure and experience and starting to make some plays. Like I'm really proud of Jalen, production-wise the past 2 games. He's really stepped it up and played better for us. And so I think, there's a bunch of young guys that are playing and getting better. And a lot of times it's harder in the special teams aspect to see. It's easy to notice, okay, I go make the tackle, or shoot, I missed the tackle and give up a big play. Like those are the glaring things that get seen. And but there's a lot of other things, whether it's the blocking or the holding up, or just doing their job in a coverage phase of being where they need to be and setting an edge and turning it back so that somebody else can get credit for the tackle. But I think we've improved each week as far as how we're playing and especially in our coverage. We're getting better there, and I'm pleased. And I think guys are starting to really figure it out, and hopefully we can continue to just try to get better every week. That's all we're looking to do.
The dynamic kickoff changing this year to 35.
Mm-hmm.
Has that, since there's a lot more returns and everything this year versus last year, does that even kind of force you to come up with new ideas on the fly a little bit differently this year than last year even, or have you approached it any differently? Is the team spending more time on it or anything like that?
Yeah, we are. I think it's forcing you to try to have a couple more answers in your return game because of the amount that are getting returned, and you don't want to keep giving the same look over and over. I think the challenging part, and it's for all teams, it's not just for the Saints, each week becomes the guys that have to block, trying to get them in the proper matchups, right? Because that's one of the things on kickoff we do. If you ever notice, we move guys around in different spots so that we're trying to get a matchup favorable for us. And so when you're on kick return, all of a sudden you'd really prefer not to have one of your safeties blocking one of their bigger, D end or edge players. So that's where like the creativity and also being able to be sound and everybody understanding what we need to do schematically, but also trying to put them in a favorable matchup that they're able to have a chance to have success in the blocking scheme. And each week that changes because really from a KOR standpoint, you have to adapt to what the kickoff team puts out there. So if they're putting 6 big guys or 7 big guys and 3 skill players, we try to, do the same and match up from a body type standpoint. And that's where, your roster management comes in as far as what players are up and active on game day that you can use if you need to try to go bigger or something like that.
Have you seen teams like tinker with it more this year than they did last year because just the penalty for touchbacks and everything? Like, are they being a little bit more creative?
Yeah, I think they are. I think so, yes. I do. I think teams, especially in the kickoff phase of it, right, are being more creative as far as obviously we see the types of kicks that you're getting, but then also the different types of schemes. Like if you watch, there's a lot of pick schemes because you're so close. Kind of like I look at it as like, when the defensive line runs a pass rush game on 3rd down, right, and they're like picking the guard or tackle for each other to try to get home on a sack. There's a bunch of that's showing up as well that you have to try to be able to prepare and practice for. And I think we tried to incorporate a couple new things in our install meetings as far as like putting the slide up there of who the bodies are and like the jersey numbers above it and who's going towards who, and because it could be different people having to do different things in our return scheme based off of matchups and just trying to rep it. And it's a lot of times, a lot of that has to occur in a meeting because you only get so many full speed reps in a practice week when it comes to those phases. So,
what are some of the factors you look at when you're deciding who you send back there to return kicks? Obviously, without Kendre, there'll be some change. I know Bayless is back on the active. So, what kind of goes into that?
Yeah, look, I think there's a couple things, right? I think you want somebody that is going to make a really good decision of when we need to field the ball, when we don't need to field the ball. You have to be able to literally field the ball, right, with the different kicks that are coming. So those things are critical. And then you're also looking, obviously, for somebody who has the ability to make a positive play in the return game, whether it be because of speed or being able to break a tackle or something like that. And then, the other fact that comes into it too is you have to have guys back there that also are able to block, because the guy who doesn't catch the ball is going to have to be able to block one of those guys coming down there. And again, schematically, we try to do our best to put him on a matchup that's going to be somebody that's one of their, we perceive as like their guy playing the safety, so he doesn't have to go try to take on a big guy. So there's a lot of factors that go into it. And then again, it goes back to who do you have up on game day to be able to give you all those things from the 48 you have available.
Just going with Devin last week on the fly, was that for a rookie to be in that situation, what kind of made you feel like he was the choice there?
Yeah, I think he had practiced at it last week. We had started getting him some practice back there, and I think he provides good decision making. He's smart. He makes good decisions there. He has the ability to be a blocker, and then I think what our job is schematically is what does he do well. Right, so he's not like a blazer that you want to try to cut it all the way back to the field or something like that, but he does run hard and he's able to be successful in some downhill type of returns. And so when the ball goes to him, we want to try to be able to get that scheme implemented. And that's another part that goes into it, right? Like you may have a call one way, but they kick it to the other way, and then how do you able to adjust and get the blocks and that sort of thing that you need.
In recent weeks, Nephi has been available for your special team side. Just how much value does he bring as somebody that's been a part of the scheme for a while? Yeah,
look, I think Nephi brings a ton of value for us. He's kind of like a calming force. He's been and played a lot of football, special teams wise. He understands it. He's very smart, and he kind of helps put all of it together. He's very good in the punt protection game for us. And then he gives you, another guy that does a good job in coverage. And I think that is the experience factor that we started this talking about the young guys that they're gaining on special teams is so different than anything that they've been accustomed to in college. And really the only way that you kind of get better at it is by doing it. So you're going to have some good plays, you're going to have some mistakes, and that's the thing we're just trying to do a good job of, is pointing out, all right, well, here was the mistake, how do we correct it? here was good. How do we continue to do it good from a special team standpoint? And, you know, there's only so many snaps in the preseason that some of these young guys got. And in the preseason, it's really, really vanilla from a special team standpoint as to, you know, there's not a lot of schematic stuff that's going on. So it's a learning curve for them. And I think we're doing our best to get them ready to go. All set? Thanks, guys. Appreciate you.